Hello, welcome to the replay. This conversation is being broadcast live on Facebook, on Periscope, and on YouTube. Thank you all for watching. Let me know in the comments that you are seeing this just because I'm curious. This is going to be a brief conversation, but a conversation that I hope is impactful and I hope gives us something to think about as we move through this life. So, if this is your first time here, welcome to the Confetti Collective. The Confetti Collective is a digital media platform that inspires women to boost their confidence so that they can create their big, beautiful lives. And I am Mo James, founder of the Confetti Collective. I am a chief certified confidence coach, and I my job through this brand is to inspire your audacity. That's what we do. That's what we hope to help you achieve, because when you get to that point when you are operating in your fullness and in your greatness, you can be out here doing all the things that we are called to do in our lives. So I want to talk really briefly about women and identity. And this conversation was is inspired by an article that has been floating around the internet streets today, um, in certain spaces, related to a woman professor who has been very active in black cultural spaces as a writer and a professor, and she published an article today admitting that she's not even black, that she has been writing about this topic and writing about these topics for years, and she has been perpetrating. She is not a black woman in any shade. So the title of this broadcast, if you're watching on Facebook, says, I have no identity outside of this. I have never developed one. And this is a sentence that she wrote in her article where she is admitting to being what she calls herself a cultural leech. She is admitting to years of pretending to be a black woman. And she said she had assumed various identities within a blackness that she had no right to claim. She pretended to be North African black. She pretended to be US black. She pretended to be Caribbean Bronx black, like, and she's actually a white Jewish woman from Kansas City. And that's a whole different conversation. You all can find uh people sharing their ideas about that whole thing, but that's not what I want to talk about today. What I want to talk about in this conversation is the sentence where she says, I have no identity outside of this. And the this is the being a cultural leech. The this that she's referring to is the false identity of being a black woman. She says, I have no identity outside of this. I have never developed one. And that sentence, in addition to everything else that she said, because she is very, very forthright, I guess, more honest than you would probably expect somebody to be when they're admitting that they have been pretending to be something that they're not. But that sentence hit me really hard because I immediately thought, wow, what kind of existence is that? What does that feel like to only know how to operate in a lie? What does that feel like to only know how to be something that you are very much not? What I can't even imagine what that is like. But the fact that this very accomplished woman is writing about this also tells me that there are women from all walks of life that are in this same predicament right now. There are women from all walks of life that are walking around wearing an identity that doesn't belong to them. And they are wearing it like ill fitting clothing. They are walking around being somebody that they're not. It might not be to this extent that this woman was doing, but I am certain that it's happening. I am certain of that. So I want to talk briefly just about why it's so important for women to discover their identity, because in the what she says is she doesn't have an identity outside of this. She's never developed one. And what I first want to say is that your identity is something that first has to be discovered. So it's not something that you manufacture outside of you, but it's already there. We just have to discover it, meaning we might have to dig, just like an archaeologist. We have to go digging and searching for the truest part of ourselves. And then once we've discovered it, then we can develop it. So that might be part of the disconnect with this person. So first, discovering that identity is so important, because when you don't know who you are, you put yourself at risk. You make yourself vulnerable to other people's ideas of who they think you should be. You risk succumbing to you risk stepping into a box that somebody else created for you, and that doesn't fit you. Um, and that's dangerous. That's dangerous. It's so important for women to discover our identity for real, because let's just be honest. Women, we are the ones, we are the adults in the room. We are. We are the adults in the room. We are the ones that know how to rise to the occasion and know how to lead, uh, how to operate with moral leadership. We're the ones that are more likely than not to know what the right thing is to do and to do it. We are also the ones that are nurturing future generations, generally speaking. And we are also the ones, like, we're the responsible parties. So we almost don't have room to be out here walking around flip flopping with somebody else's identity. We have to get there. We have to learn and discover who we are, because other things are depending on that awareness. There are other things in this life that are riding on our ability to know who we are truly, for real. So I want to offer some tips, and then I'm going to go. That's it. So the first tip I want to offer to help us, because I am a woman, so I am included in this conversation, to help us get to that point of discovering who we are, is first choosing that whatever happens, we're not going to give up. We're going to get up. Whatever happens. And I know that there are probably some of you watching that you are probably like, girl, Mo, listen, you can't even comprehend all of the stuff that I have been through in this life. I get it. Believe me. And yet here you are. So the decision, it starts with us making a decision that we are going to live fully, capital LIVE, and instead of just not die. We're not going to live a half life. We're not going to live lowest common denominator. We are going to get everything that life has for us. We are going to leave this earth empty because we have maximized every single experience that was brought to us. That's step one. Just choosing to live, choosing to live fully, live boldly, live out loud, and getting up getting up after life does what life does. Second tip is making mistakes. Like we have to be willing to take action before we can learn, before we can get the insight. Some of us want to have the insight without taking action. And there are just some lessons that we will only learn after we learn the lesson, after we make the mistake. There are some of you watching that it was only after you dealt with uh, that person that you know you shouldn't have dealt with that you finally recognize, you know what? This kind of one is not for me. I just need to just leave these alone altogether. Just leave these on the shelf for somebody else to pick up because they just don't fit me. there are some there are just some lessons that we only learn after we've made the mistake. So we have to be willing to make those mistakes as we move through that journey to figure out who we are not. Some lessons, there are some experiences that are designed to teach us who we are not. And through the process of elimination, we'll figure out who we are. So we have to be willing to make the mistakes. Like I said in tip 1, it's okay. You made a mistake. Okay, I'm going to get up and keep learning and keep growing and keep moving through this thing. And then my final tip is to invite feedback. Like there are some of us that have people in our lives that will tell us the truth whether we want it or not. You know, like we don't even ask them. And sometimes they just got words for us. Okay? Recognize that that person in your life that will tell you the truth whether you ask for it or not is probably also pushing you into operating fully in that identity. And they're giving you that brutal truth because they want you to be clear. They're giving you that brutal truth because they want you to know with 100% certainty what your standard is. And we might not value it in the moment, but I'd be willing to bet that we can look back on some of those brutally honest conversations and be like, you know what, so and so was 100% right. They were right to call me out on my stuff. They were right to tell me I was acting like I didn't have any common sense. They were right to tell me all the things that they told me. And when we can receive that, then that helps support us learning more about who we are and discovering our true identity. I don't want any of us to be walking around here with somebody else's clothes on. Because that's what that's like. When you remember when you were a kid, and I don't, some of you did this, but I was always in my mother's closet. Always in her closet. Putting on clothes, wearing this, digging in her stuff, always. And do we recognize that as little girls we do that? We are literally trying on our mothers' or grandmothers' aunts' clothing to see if we can act like them. To see if putting this jacket on, I can start acting like so and so. We are trying those things on to see if they fit. We do that as kids, and then sometimes we get stuck in somebody else's clothing as adults. And we go years and years and years and years wearing something that was never ours. And I don't want that for any of us. I want us to use the fortitude that is in us, to call up the ovarian fortitude that we all carry, to be able to do the work required to discover who we really are. Who we really are. Because when we know who we really are, then we will be okay. We can set boundaries and be okay with people having a problem with it. Like, that's your problem, not mine. You know, we can be okay with people not being okay with our decisions because we know the higher reason. We know that what we're doing is in alignment with who we are. And stepping out of that just is out of the question. We simply cannot do that. We simply can't compromise on who we are to make somebody else comfortable. We simply can't do it. So that is why it's so important that we discover and then develop that identity, because there is so much that rests on us first learning who we really are as women so that we can walk this journey out and encounter the people that we're going to encounter along the way and either give a word to them or hold space for them or nurture them to their next level. Whatever it is, it's not just for us. So like I said, I could have made this all about the controversy surrounding the professor who decided today was going to be the day that she was going to tell the truth. And I mean, again, we can feel a way she was wrong for pretending to be a black woman speaking on black issues and all of these different ways. That was all the way wrong. I just hope that from this day on, she really has what it takes to go through the hard days that are going to come. And not just because of what people are going to have to say about what she's done, but it's going to be really hard for her to take that off and dig through her personage and discover who she is. That's going to be really hard because she's been pretending for a lot of years. Publicly, and not just pretending quietly, but pretending publicly for a lot of years. That's going to take that's going to be a lot of emotional work that she's going to have to do. So the lesson for us, because I believe that life is always trying to teach us stuff, the lesson for us is just to recognize that we all also have to do our own work and be willing to go through the process. And we have what it takes. We do. We civilization came through a woman. So you can't tell me that there is anything that we cannot do. I just refuse to accept that. So if we can birth generations, we can do this too. So let's do it. Thank you so much for tuning in. Drop your questions, comments. I would love to hear your takeaways about that part, about the identity part. Because for me, that's the higher lesson. I don't want to spend a whole bunch of time talking about the mistake that this woman made. I would rather shift into figuring out what we need to do to make sure that we don't do the same thing. Okay? So thank y'all so much for tuning in. If you are a new follower of the Confetti Collective, these are the kind of conversations that we have. Real talk with real women to help us get to some real growth. Like, that's what it's all about. So I thank you just for being a part of the collective. I thank you for being here. I would love to hear your comments, your takeaways. Let's continue this conversation. And until my next broadcast, I will catch you later.